Good morning. My name is Famita Gwadri Sridhar, and I am the founder and CEO of Pulse InfoFrame. Today, I wanted to speak to you about the CDKL5 Patient Registry, which is really a platform capturing the patient's journey and patient's voice. A patient registry that we're all very proud of and really appreciate the collaboration with the CDKL5 Alliance, who I would like to thank for allowing me to speak today. We know that the road to treatment has many twists and turns. You, as patients and as caregivers, understand this better than most. But to really be successful, we have to establish a strong foundation, a foundation that grows with your requirements and one that future-proofs your journey and your data so that we can continue to grow together. The strength of the global CDKL5 platform is quite significant. It brings patients together from all around the world, forming one powerful voice, breaking down the siloed databases that people have, which are all very important and can contribute to the future growth, but ultimately working towards unifying a collaboration for the purpose of accelerating science and research, and ultimately forming a strong community in support of patients and caregivers. So what do we mean by this? We know that to succeed, we need to work together to advance treatment. If we think about patients, you and patient groups, we understand the important role that patients and patient groups play, and we're proud to involve them in our development process. We know that the key opinion leaders, physicians, and researchers are really interested in being able to utilize data to advance research and to advance new hypotheses. Sponsors, pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, and others are also equally important because all of the data that comes from patients and from researchers and from clinical sites ultimately are there to support the creation and the understanding of new drugs that can be developed to support the CDKL5 community. And our role as a company that's providing the platform is one that works together in tandem with each of these groups to really understand what each of the stakeholders need and want and why it's important. Nothing can happen without patients. And so when we talk about the patient registry, it truly is a registry by the patients for the patients. The patient voice is key to help us overcome challenges, especially in rare disease drug development, to categorize the disease and identify commonalities. And I'm going to talk more about that. Understand disease progression. Every patient journey is different. When we were building the CDKL5 registry, I had an opportunity to work with people in the UK. Here you can see Carol Ann at a meeting in Boston. And we were there together really trying to understand as a community what some of the important considerations are from a patient's perspective and what some of the missing links are from a physician and researcher perspective. And what is it that sponsors are truly looking for that can really help us accelerate the time that it would take to get treatment. Endpoints for trials are also very important. So how do you understand the right data to collect? We have a tendency to want to collect everything we possibly can, but let's think about it. Imagine if you went to a grocery store and you were asked to put whatever you need in a basket, but you only have one basket. And ahead of you, you have so many choices. You would try to put as many things as you possibly can. But sometimes when you do that, you can't make anything from all of those ingredients. You have no cake you can bake, you have no appetizer you can make. And I'm using this only as an example to say that sometimes we have a tendency to try to collect a lot of information, but the information has to be thought about in advance. What is it that we want to study? What are the things that we want to know? And so taking a very pragmatic approach, really understanding what is going to be required, and being thoughtful about what we're asking patients to provide, because they have a lot on their plates, as well as their families and caregivers. We know, though, that it's important to characterize every patient, not only because every voice matters, but because every patient has a different patient journey. And it is this difference that really creates complexity when we're looking at drug development, where sometimes drugs will work at a certain point in the patient's journey and not in others. And so part of what the patient registry does is to try to really understand a patient's journey. Think about your own journey, the time to diagnosis, the time to treatment, the time to actually see the specialist that you need. Each of these are different with every single patient and every single patient group. So together, what we have to do is really understand several components that are important to create this map around the patient journey. What are the symptoms that each patient has? What are the diagnoses and the diagnoses odyssey or the journey? What happens with each patient in the condition progression? As a child grows and gets older, what are the different things that happen, the different manifestations? What are the different treatments that occur? And then what are the different ways to manage the condition? And to do this, you need a lot of structure. You need information that comes in a way that can be standardized and understood so that we can understand across many patients how their journey differs and how those data can be analyzed to support a better understanding of the disease and to support drug development. The CDKL5 Registry, this initiative started over 3 years ago, actually in 2017. And here, working with the Lulu Foundation and the University of Pennsylvania and Dan Lavery and his group, we were able to come up with a mechanism to really understand what was going to be required by the community, by talking to the community, by talking to patients, by talking to researchers, by talking to key opinion leaders who are the experts in treating CDKL5. And essentially what we knew we needed was a secure, private, compliant cloud-based infrastructure, which would allow people to collaborate from all over the world. We need to make sure that families are providing consent and they're fully consented so that they can understand and learn about what is going on in the CDKL5 community and contribute to the formation of clinical trials. Ultimately, we know why this was started, and I've put this case study here. I won't read it all, but we know that some of the issues were that we couldn't categorize some of the problems and some of the experiences that patients and families had, whether it was with quality of life or the lifetime cost of treatment or the social impact of the condition on the family and their caregivers. So why was this registry really important? Why was it needed? Because we really need to capture the natural history of the disease to get a deeper understanding of the implication and impact of advances in genotyping, impact of quality of life, looking at whether a reduced time to diagnosis improves outcomes. And that's where the patient registry plays a very key role. How was it developed? Well, it was developed through a collaboration with the Lulu Foundation and the Orphan Disease Center at UPenn. And this is important because nothing goes forward without collaboration. And we know that there were different initiatives underway. And so one of the things that we were able to do as a community is work together with Helen Leonard and the IFCR and really build a really nice opportunity to collaborate so that patients knew that as they contribute data into this CDKL5 registry, the CDKL5 registry would then also be able to, with patient consent, share data with Helen and her colleagues so that they can study and advance additional areas that are still in question and left open. And so what this has also created is a terrific opportunity to build new ways to study data and to create new studies, such as the exciting new study that will be put in place to better understand endpoints. This diagram seems a little bit busy, and it is, and I apologize. But let's look at where data comes from, because this is important. There are existing data that many of you have collected, and those data are important. We don't want to waste them. And so part of the initiative that we're currently engaged in is really understanding how do we use the data that are already there, and how do we ingest them and make sure that they're still usable. And then secondly, we need to look at patient-generated data, the data that you put in as part of the patient registry. Over time, though, the sky is the limit. We can look at bringing in wearables in our platform, ingesting data directly from electronic health records, pathology, claims, billing, etc. But why is this important? Remember the slide with the patient journey. Each of these components is an important part of the jigsaw. We can start with some things with novel data, but we can continue to add and continue to grow so that ultimately on the right-hand side, what you see here is that we are enabling access to clinical trials, helping with designing studies that actually have the patient voice included in them, creating this global collaboration with bigger, global, broader clinical networks. And ultimately, the quality of the data has to be of the highest level in order for it to be available and accessible for regulators. There is nothing worse than collecting data that is not usable by the regulatory agencies. And that's why we have designed our platform in a way that actually aligns with what the regulators are looking for. A traditional way that people used to focus on building real-world data registries and patient registries was really one by one, as you see on the left-hand side. Working with the Office of Rare Disease over several years, we have come up with a platform that has common data elements, things that are common across diseases. And why is this important? As we build on this foundation, again, the foundation that you saw with the journey, with a small house growing into a bigger house, to get there, we want to be able to look across diseases. We want to be able to understand what is common potentially between CDKL5 and other conditions, because sometimes the cures, the opportunities for new treatments can only be found by collaborating across, but also, most importantly, within. Each of these components that you see in the foundation are highly structured. They meet a regulatory standard, capturing and collating the data in a way that helps the regulators understand exactly what is being collected and why. Here, I share a little bit about the different phases of a clinical trial, but I'm going to skip this and go to this slide, which is really about you. How can patients and patient advocacy groups support drug development? Well, by contributing to a patient registry, think of the inputs that you have all along the way. Your data helps to inform preclinical information, trial design, understanding how many patients, what design of study, how do we become more efficient in terms of what we do? And finally, the data that comes out is important for analysis and ultimately dissemination. And what that means is, can we publish? Can we share? Can we make the data usable? And ultimately, can the data be significant enough that once a drug comes to market, we're also able to support pricing reimbursement, because that's really the ultimate goal. Patient engagement is something that is a critical part of this. And so the first thing that we're doing is beginning to expand this registry, with the Italian registry joining next, and we're very excited about that. And also giving the patient the opportunity to really contribute how they feel in a qualitative way, questions around how am I doing, and also being able to share data back, because continually asking for information without giving something back is not engaging. And so we have taken a lot of time and speaking to patients and learning from our other registries to really understand how to engage patients, to continue to ask for your feedback and continue to evolve and grow, so that truly we're addressing many of these engagement obstacles, which are often a problem. We know that patients cannot, especially now during COVID, travel as much. And so instead of the patient going to the technology, it's really about the technology going to the patient and their family and caregivers. And we know that there's already a significant burden on people. So how do we make this easy? What we've done is really made sure that end-to-end patient engagement is possible through mobile access, through a guided onboarding process, to make sure that there's content, to make sure that you're getting data back and insights, and that there's communication set up with you so that you know when there are new studies, new surveys, new information. Ultimately, when I was talking to patients and their caregivers when we were building this registry, it struck me that often one mother described to me that if she had a child who was seizuring, she needed to enter data using one hand on a phone. And so listening to this, we understood that we needed to make sure that there were opportunities to provide data in different ways, whether it was mobile, tablet, or desktop. So again, the choice is yours as to how you want to contribute. Ultimately, the data that you put in is important for you. And so we have built in really nice dashboards and insights so that you can see where other people are in the world or how they're doing. You may not know who they are, but part of understanding what's going on at a global scale is being able to take data, remove the identification of the patients, and being able to share pictures and dashboards that provide insights to everybody who is working within the patient registry. And everything should be seamless. And so, the opportunity to actually understand why this is important, a landing page where you can see, as I mentioned, where people are, and documents and information about clinical trials and other information, which is very important to feel like you're part of this global community, which you are. And we've changed our user interface, I think, for the better, where you can see everything left to right. You're only seeing one question at a time. And so if you were doing something and you wanted to just answer a couple of questions, you can see exactly where you are and check off what you need to answer and then come back to it with the finish later button. So again, really proud to be involved in this patient registry and really excited to launch the global registry starting with Italy. Thank you again, Antonino, and the Global Alliance for allowing us the opportunity to share today. Thank you.